Welcome back, my family. Tonight, we're stepping into new homes with dark pasts. 3 true stories of people who thought they moved in alone, but they weren't. Turn off the lights. And let's begin. I never thought silence could be this loud. When I first walked into the house, it felt like a blank page. Clean, still, almost too still. It was everything I'd wanted. After years of renting apartments with paper-thin walls, barking dogs and fighting neighbors, this little house on the edge of town felt like peace. It was late February when I moved in. Gray skies, bare trees, and that strange, static feeling in the air that comes before spring. The place had been empty for years, but it didn't feel abandoned. The previous owner, a woman named Margaret, had passed away in the living room. Natural causes, according to the agent. I didn't ask for details. I should have. The first few nights were quiet. Too quiet. No creaks, no pipes, no settling noises. It was the kind of silence that presses against your ears until you hear your own heartbeat. I remember sitting in bed on the third night realizing I could hear the electricity, a faint buzz from the outlet beside my head. It made me uneasy, that awareness of how still everything else was. I started leaving the TV on at night, just for noise. On the 5th day, I unpacked the last of my boxes, books mostly, a few framed photos. As I arranged them on the shelves, I noticed something strange. The light from the window didn't hit the same spots twice. One day, it would pour directly onto the bookshelf. The next, it stopped halfway across the floor. At first, I thought maybe it was just the weather. But then one morning, I saw the shadow of the window frame stretch in the wrong direction, toward the corner instead of away from it. Little things, right? Things you brush off. But little things add up. The house made me feel watched, not by someone, but by itself. Whenever I turned a corner, I had this flash of anticipation, like I was about to run into something. Sometimes I'd stop halfway down the hallway because I was certain I'd hear footsteps behind me. When I turned around, it was always empty. I told myself I was just adjusting. That's what everyone says. New house, new sounds. Except there weren't any sounds and just silence, deep and patient. Then came the mornings. Every single one, I'd wake up at 3:17 a.m. Not 3:16, not 3:18, every night. I'd sit up sweating, heart racing with no idea why. At first I blamed insomnia, anxiety. But I started noticing things slightly moved in the mornings. My shoes weren't where I'd left them. A chair angled differently. A book lying open when I was sure I'd closed it. Once I took a photo of my living room before going to bed, just to prove to myself I wasn't losing it. When I woke up, everything looked exactly the same, except there was a faint blur on the wall behind the couch, like someone had brushed past it. It was probably me. It had to be me. That's what I told myself. Still, I started locking my bedroom door at night, and every morning it was unlocked. After the first week, I started hearing things, not loud, not obvious, just faint interruptions in the silence. A single tap, a floorboard shifting in another room, sometimes a sound like breathing through fabric. I tried recording it once, set my phone on the nightstand before I went to bed. When I played it back in the morning, I expected to hear nothing, but the recording started with my own breathing, steady and soft. Then, around 3:17 a.m., it changed. A new rhythm joined mine, a second breath, slower, deeper, perfectly timed between each inhale and exhale. I deleted the file. That day, I didn't leave the house. I sat in the kitchen for hours, staring at the doorway, half expecting something to step through it. I told myself it was just stress, moving, loneliness, the adjustment period. But when night came, I pushed the dresser against my bedroom door. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up again. My body just knew. The clock on the nightstand glowed red, 3:17, and from somewhere in the house, I heard footsteps. Soft, dragging steps moving from room to room, slow, unhurried. They stopped right outside my door. The dresser didn't move, but I could feel the air shift. That subtle pressure change, like when someone large walks into a small space. The sound lingered for minutes. Then silence again. When I opened the door in the morning, nothing was out of place, except the clock in the living room. It had stopped at 3:17. I threw it away. I started working from home after that. I didn't trust myself to focus anywhere else, but something about being in the house all day made the hours melt together. Time slipped. I'd blink and the light would change, morning to dusk in a heartbeat. Once I found myself sitting on the floor with the TV remote in my hand, staring at the wall. The TV was off, and I had no idea how long I'd been there. The house wasn't loud, but it wasn't quiet anymore either. It had a pulse, a subtle rhythm behind everything. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the pipes, the faint rattle of windows when the wind moved. Except there was no wind that day. It felt like the house was mimicking life, as if it was learning what being alive sounded like. One afternoon, a neighbor dropped by. An older man, gray hair, wrinkled face, said he used to know the woman who'd lived here before me. He called her Margaret. He looked around the house uneasy, said she'd been nice but different near the end, started talking about the noises, about how she'd call him in the middle of the night swearing someone was inside. They never found anyone. He lowered his voice when he said it. She stopped going outside altogether. Then one morning they found her in the living room, sitting up, eyes open. I didn't say anything. I just smiled and thanked him for coming by. But after he left, I couldn't go near that room. That night I dreamed about Margaret. She was sitting on my couch. Her skin was gray. Her mouth never moved, but her eyes followed me when I turned away. And when I finally looked at her face, really looked, I realized it wasn't her. It was me. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, and the TV, which I'd unplugged before bed, was on. The days blurred after that. I started writing notes to myself. Little reminders: lock the doors. Eat something. Don't listen to the walls. I didn't even remember writing that last one. But there it was, and scrawled in my handwriting. The air in the house felt heavier, thicker. The silence wasn't just quiet anymore. It pressed. And when I sat still long enough, I could swear I heard something faint beneath it, like words just below hearing. I caught myself whispering sometimes. Nothing coherent, just murmuring under my breath as if I was answering someone. That's when I decided to sleep in the car for a night. Just to reset, get out. But at 3:17 a.m., I woke up, head resting on the steering wheel, frost on the inside of the glass, and the house lights were on. Every single one. Glowing through the windows like eyes. I don't remember turning them on. I didn't go back inside that night. I sat in my car until the sun rose, watching those lights burn through the windows. When morning finally came, they flickered off, and one by one, as if the house knew it was being watched. I told myself I'd pack my things and leave. Find somewhere new. But when I opened the front door, everything looked wrong. The furniture was still there. The pictures were still on the walls. But the layout, the angles, were slightly off. The hallway seemed longer. The ceiling a little lower. It was as if the house had stretched while I was gone. I tried to ignore it. Just grabbed a box and started throwing my things inside. But then I saw the notes, hundreds of them, pinned to the refrigerator, stuck to the bathroom mirror, lined along the walls of the living room, all written in my handwriting. Lock the door. Don't go in the living room. Stop talking to her. It's not your voice. I stood there staring at them, trying to remember when I'd written any of it. My head throbbed like a migraine was clawing its way out. I took one note down, the one that said stop talking to her. On the back of it, written in red ink, was a single line. She doesn't like being ignored. That's when the static started again, not from the TV, from everywhere. The air buzzed, faint and constant, like 1,000 voices whispering through the walls. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. It wasn't sound. It was inside my head, and underneath all that noise, I could hear something else, my own voice. Repeating the same thing over and over: please stop. Please stop. Please stop. I don't remember much after that. There are flashes, pieces of memory that don't feel like mine. The neighbor standing in my doorway asking if I was all right. Me laughing too loudly. The phone ringing. A woman's voice on the other end saying she'd been trying to reach me for days. I didn't know who she was. She said her name was Margaret. I hung up. That night I dragged the couch into the kitchen and tried to sleep there, away from the hallways, away from the living room. But I couldn't. The silence kept shifting. It moved from room to room like it had weight. And somewhere inside it I heard breathing again. That slow, deep rhythm, perfectly timed between mine. I didn't sleep. At 3:17 a.m. the lights came on. One by one. The TV turned itself on too, static flickering across the screen. And for the first time there was an image. Just a few seconds of it. The living room, empty, except for someone sitting on the couch. At first, I thought it was a reflection, until I realized the person was facing the camera. And it was me. Sitting completely still, eyes open, mouth moving silently, I unplugged the TV. The image stayed. I left the house before dawn, didn't pack anything, didn't look back. I drove until the road ended, found a cheap motel, and collapsed on the bed. I thought I was free, until I woke up the next morning and saw the note on the nightstand, my handwriting, shaky, uneven. 17, the clock on the wall was blinking. The second hand stuck. I checked my phone, and it was dead. The air smelled like the house again. Dust. Old wood. Silence. And when I looked into the bathroom mirror, I saw something written across the glass in faint letters, traced by a wet fingertip, "Welcome home." We bought the house in June. The sky was bright, the grass freshly cut, and the neighborhood quiet enough that you could hear kids playing 2 blocks away. It was everything we'd been saving for. 3 bedrooms, a big yard, and that little front porch my wife always dreamed of. But the moment we stepped inside, I noticed her hesitate. Her hand still on the doorknob, eyes darting toward the end of the hallway. "What's wrong?" I asked. She shook her head quickly. "Nothing, just feels colder in there." She was right. The air inside was oddly cool. Not like air conditioning, but like the house itself hadn't warmed up to us yet. The realtor mentioned the previous owners had moved out suddenly. "Job relocation," she said. "Left behind a few pieces of furniture, nothing major. But when we explored the upstairs, we found one door sealed shut with paint. No lock. Just layers and layers of paint covering the edges like someone wanted it to disappear." I laughed it off at first. Maybe they turned it into storage. My wife didn't laugh. We didn't touch that door for weeks. There was always something else to do. Unpacking, cleaning, fixing the fence. And honestly, the rest of the house was perfect. Sunlight poured into the kitchen every morning. The kids had space to run around, and for the first time in years it felt like life was settling down. Except the upstairs always stayed colder. Even in the middle of summer, I'd feel a chill creeping up the back of my neck every time I passed that sealed door. Sometimes when I went up there at night, I swore I heard faint tapping, like fingernails against wood. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. I followed the sound up the stairs. It was coming from behind that painted door. Not constant, just 3 light taps. Then silence. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. I told my wife about it later. She went pale and said she'd heard something too, like whispering when she was doing laundry upstairs. But she didn't want to talk about it. She just said, "Let's not use that room." And we didn't. For months. Then, one afternoon, I came home early from work and found my daughter sitting on the stairs, staring at that door. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "what are you doing up here?" She turned slowly, her eyes wide. "She was knocking again," she whispered. "Who?" "The lady inside." "The lady inside." Those words hung in the air like a draft. I remember how my daughter's small voice trembled when she said it. Not playful, not imaginary. Just certain. I crouched down beside her. "Sweetheart, there's no lady in there. It's just an old room." She shook her head. "She talks when you're gone." I didn't want to scare her, but my chest felt tight. I made her go downstairs and turned back to that sealed door. The paint along the edges had started to crack, thin white veins breaking apart. I touched it lightly. Cold. Colder than the rest of the house. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak sounded like a whisper. Every shadow stretched too long. At around 2:40 a.m., I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, careful. I thought maybe my daughter had gotten up again. When I opened our bedroom door, the hallway was empty. But I saw something that made my stomach twist. The faint outline of light spilling from beneath the sealed door. Just a thin, trembling line of yellowish glow. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. By the time I reached the door, the light was gone. The crack in the paint was wider now, like the wood beneath was breathing. I leaned closer. Silence. Then, a whisper. So soft it might have been the sound of air through the vents. Or a voice saying my name. I stumbled back, dropped the flashlight, and it rolled down the hallway, flickering as it went. The next morning, the door looked normal again. No cracks, no light. I told myself I'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation, stress, whatever. But my wife looked just as tired as I felt. Over breakfast, she said quietly, "Don't tell the kids, but I heard humming last night." From upstairs. "What kind of humming?" I asked, like a lullaby. "Faint but close, right above us." We both stared at the ceiling. That's where the sealed room was. I decided I needed to open it. I waited until everyone left for the day, then grabbed a scraper and a small hammer. The layers of paint came off like old skin, thick, brittle, clinging to the edges. It took hours. When I finally pried it open, the smell hit me first. Damp, dusty, like something that hadn't been disturbed in years. Inside was a small bedroom. Bare walls, wooden floor. No furniture except for a rocking chair in the corner and a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. But what struck me most was the wallpaper. Faint, faded flowers, peeling near the top. Someone had scrawled something underneath, in thin red letters. "Don't let her out again." My hand started to shake. I turned to leave, but the door swung shut behind me, hard. The sound echoed through the empty room. I grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. I yanked harder, nothing. Then I heard the rocking chair start to creak behind me. Slow, steady. Creak, creak, creak. I didn't turn around. I pressed my forehead to the door, whispering, "Please open, please." When it finally did, I fell out into the hallway gasping. I told no one what I'd found. I painted the edges again that night. But the next morning, my daughter was sitting outside the room humming. The same lullaby my wife had heard. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that writing on the wall. "Don't let her out again." I tried to convince myself it was some sick joke from the previous owners. Kids messing around, maybe. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That handwriting didn't look playful. It looked desperate. Over the next few days, everything in the house felt wrong. The air grew heavy. Our clocks started falling behind. Only by a few minutes at first, but each day they lost more time. My wife said she'd been waking up with bruises on her arms. Our son started crying at night, saying the humming lady stood in his doorway. We didn't tell each other half of what we were hearing or seeing, maybe because we didn't want to make it real. But silence didn't help. One morning I walked into the hallway and froze. The painted door, the one I'd sealed again, was open. Not cracked. Not half closed. Wide open. Inside, the rocking chair was still. But the mirror was no longer leaning against the wall. It was upright, perfectly balanced in the center of the room, facing the doorway. And in it, I saw someone standing behind me. I spun around. No one was there. That's when my daughter came running up the stairs. "Daddy," she said, breathless. "She wants to come back." I grabbed her shoulders. "Who, sweetheart?" "Who wants to come back?" "The lady. The one who used to sing to her baby, her baby." The words hit me like a cold hand on my neck. Later that night, I went digging through the old records of the house. It took days, visits to the county office, searching dusty files. And then I found it, a newspaper clipping from 1974. Local woman found dead after infant's disappearance. Her name was Margaret Ellis, the same name the realtor had mentioned. She'd locked herself in the upstairs room after her baby died, rocked in that chair for 3 days before they broke the door down. The article said she was found still holding the infant's blanket. They sealed the room after that. Every owner after her kept it closed until me. I tried to leave that night. I told my wife to pack whatever she could and we'd stay at a motel just for a few days. But as soon as we started down the stairs, the power went out. The air filled with that humming again. Soft, distant, like a mother trying to soothe something that would never sleep. My daughter's voice cut through the dark. "She's coming down." We ran for the front door, but it wouldn't open. No matter how hard I pulled, it felt like someone was holding it shut from the other side. And then I saw the reflection in the hallway mirror. That same woman, pale, eyes sunken, cradling something invisible in her arms. Her mouth moved slowly, like she was trying to form words she'd forgotten long ago. Then the reflection smiled, and then my daughter smiled back. Everything after that is a blur. The next morning, the neighbors found the front door wide open, lights flickering, and the house empty. Empty, except for the rocking chair. Still moving. Still humming. I go back sometimes. I don't know why. Maybe part of me never left. They painted the door shut again, but if you stand in the hallway on a quiet night, you can still hear her humming. And sometimes, if you listen long enough, You'll hear the sound of a second voice joining in. Moving into our first house was supposed to be the start of something great. It was a modest, 2-story brick home on a quiet street. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. The real estate agent mentioned one quirk: the basement door. "It's old," she said, waving vaguely toward the corner of the kitchen. "The previous owners mostly left it alone. You might want to check it before using it." I laughed it off. A basement door is a basement door. At first, life in the house was normal. Boxes were unpacked, rooms were painted, and our small family settled in. But then the odd noises started. It began with a thump, just once in the dead of night. Then a scraping sound like fingernails on wood coming from the basement. My wife tried to reassure me. "Probably just the pipes," she said. "Houses make noises." But the noises didn't stop. One evening, my wife went out for a friend's birthday. I stayed home to finish unpacking. At 11 p.m., the basement door creaked open slowly. I froze mid-step. "Hello?" I called. No response. I grabbed a flashlight and went down the creaking stairs. Nothing, just the old furnace and dusty shelves. I noticed something then. The old wooden door leading to the back of the basement was slightly ajar. I was sure I had locked it. A chill ran down my spine. I closed it, locked it, and went back upstairs, convincing myself it was stress. The next few nights were worse. I began hearing whispers. Not from outside. Not from neighbors. They came from the basement, soft, almost too soft to catch. Sometimes just a single word, "Come." Sometimes a sentence, "She's waiting." I asked my wife if she heard anything. She didn't. I wondered if I was imagining things, but the scratches on the basement door proved I wasn't. They were real. I started keeping a notebook, jotting down times, sounds, and anything unusual. The basement door would rattle at 2:17 a.m. exactly almost every night. The whispers grew louder, insistent. One rainy afternoon, I went through some old boxes the previous owners had left. Among them was a dusty, leather-bound journal. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor Hayes. The entries were fragmented and strange. He told me to keep her down. I tried, but she screams. "The neighbors hear nothing. No one must know. I can't let her out." Reading it, I felt a wave of nausea. The handwriting became erratic in later entries, almost childlike. "She comes back sometimes. I see her. She waits by the door." The last entry was particularly chilling. "I can't lock her anymore. I fear what will happen. If you find this, do not open the basement door." I couldn't stop myself. That night, I decided to face it. I went to the basement. The door was slightly open, as if inviting me. Heart racing, I pushed it fully open. The basement was empty. At first glance, anyway. Then I noticed something on the wall and scratches. Hundreds of tiny scratches forming shapes, letters. A single word repeated, "Free." Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. I felt a presence behind me, a whisper. "You shouldn't have come." I spun around, nothing, but the temperature dropped instantly. My breath came out in clouds. The door slammed shut. I tried to open it. Locked from the inside, I pounded, screamed, and kicked. Nothing. Hours felt like days. Then I heard the sound of chains dragging across the floor. Something moved in the corner. A small figure appeared, pale, eyes hollow. A girl, maybe 10 years old. Her clothes were old-fashioned, ragged. "She's mine," whispered a voice from behind. I turned. No one was there. The girl walked slowly toward me. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then she pointed to a trapdoor in the floor, one I hadn't noticed before. I lifted it. Beneath was a small crawlspace. Inside, dolls, blankets, old toys, and a skeleton of a small child. My stomach turned. The journal made sense now. Eleanor Hayes had kept her child hidden, or worse, the child never survived. And apparently her spirit never left. I ran. Up the stairs, through the house, grabbing my wife and son. We left the house and didn't look back. The house was sold a few months later. The new owners claimed everything was fine, but I know better. Some nights I still dream of that basement. I can hear her whispers, come back. And sometimes I wake to the sound of tiny scratches on my bedroom door.